Well, hello. Today, I had the pleasure of going to my local theater to watch Iron Lung. This is the movie directed by Markiplier, the YouTuber Markiplier. He wrote and directed this film. He also stars in it. I would say he is the actor in this movie for 98% of it, okay? So this film, Iron Lung, is based on an indie video game of the same name. The video game was made by David Szymanski, and Markiplier took a liking to this game for whatever reason and decided to make it a feature film. So the backdrop to this story, Iron Lung, is you have a future world that has experienced an apocalyptic event called the Quiet Rapture. What has happened is stars and planets have basically just disapparated, they've disappeared, and these survivors are basically damned to float through space and explore random little moons in an attempt to survive. Okay, so that is the backdrop of this story. Another important tidbit is that some of these moons that they're exploring have oceans of blood upon them. Okay, I think it's suggested that these oceans of blood come from the billions of people that just disappeared along with, for instance, Earth. And these oceans of blood somehow come from that event. I'm not an expert on this lore. I actually knew very little about this game going into the movie, and then I had to kind of retroactively look up some of the lore to kind of understand a little better what I just watched. But this kind of sets the stage for our story that is this film, okay? This film is basically 2 hours of us with Markiplier in a little submarine going through an ocean of blood trying to discover things, okay? So my initial reaction coming out of the theater is that you can look at this project in a couple of different ways, right? You can look at it as a really impressive YouTuber passion project. And if you look at it in that light, I think it's really cool. I think it's impressive and it's very interesting to watch. But if we're looking at it as a feature film that needs to stand on its own 2 feet, I don't think it works all that well. And I'm going to go through, I would say, like probably 3 big reasons I don't think it works very well as a standalone feature film, okay? The first would be that the story is very vague and there's a lot of guesswork that I was doing in the theater to try to figure out what was going on, okay? I went into this, like I said, not having played the game, not watching playthroughs of the game, not really knowing much about the game. I knew a little bit, but not a lot at all. And I think that was maybe a mistake. There was a lot of things that I feel like were lost on me. Probably a lot of references or a lot of Easter eggs maybe that I just didn't get. I was lost throughout the movie at various points trying to figure out what people's motivations were, where we were going, what exactly happened, you know, like what the context of everything that was going on was. It was just not explained that well in the movie. It was not set up that well in the movie. And it just seemed very vague to me a lot of times, which is ironic because then at times it seemed like it was playing its cards way too obviously. It was kind of telegraphing some things that maybe should have been secrets or should have been more tucked close to the chest, but it just kind of laid them out on the table. And then there were other things like that needed to be explained that just weren't explained well. And I was left guessing a lot of the time as to what was going on. The second thing is that, like I said in the beginning, Markiplier is pretty much the actor in this movie. There are very few other actors that we see. Maybe for like a cumulative 5 minutes do we see other people in this movie. We hear other people's voices quite often, but really for the majority of the movie, it is Markiplier doing the acting, Markiplier acting against the disembodied voices of other people. It is Markiplier. And for any actor, that would be quite the burden to bear. I mean, this is I think it's a little over 2 hours or right around 2 hours. I mean, to have a whole 2-hour movie just on you, I think for any actor, that would be intimidating. And Markiplier has maybe had some training. He's had some experience acting in the past, but he's not a career actor. And I think it shows in parts of the movie. I think he does fine, but there's not the punch of somebody who is a career actor who really knows what they're doing. And I think the movie suffers because we decided to just focus on him for like 98% of the movie. That's fair. I mean, it's his project. He can do what he wants. I mean, he directed, wrote, and acted in it. He can do whatever he wants. That's fine. I'm just saying, as a feature film that we want to stand on its own 2 feet without the fandom of Markiplier swaying our views, I think that was maybe a mistake. I think we needed maybe a more seasoned director directing Markiplier, or we needed Markiplier directing more seasoned actors. I think it was maybe a mistake for him to do all of this at once because I think the lack of experience definitely showed a little bit in this movie. The third thing I would say, and this is maybe a little more nitpicky, but still important, is that I was having a really hard time understanding some of the dialogue in this film. I think the way it was mixed with some of the background music and some of the sound effects, especially in the beginning, it was like almost hard to hear kind of the setup for the movie and some of the initial dialogue that was happening over the intercom system. Actually, a lot of dialogue is happening over like a PA intercom system between Markiplier and his command. And some of that is just really hard to hear. A lot of this movie has exposition that happens through dialogue. And I feel like I was missing some of that important exposition because it was like in a garbled PA and it was just not mixed the best. And that was problematic because I was already like fighting for my life to try to figure out what was going on, what people's motivations were, what, the context of everything is. And then not being able to figure out some of the dialogue that was probably explaining that was also a little bit frustrating. Not everything was bad, obviously. There were things I enjoyed. I enjoyed seeing Markiplier play this role. I mean, I like Markiplier. I'm not like a super fan, but I like his stuff. I actually was turned on to playthroughs of video games by his playthrough of Until Dawn. Prior to seeing that, I had the opinion, like, why would you watch somebody else play a video game? And then when I saw his playthrough of Until Dawn, I was like, I get it. Okay, I get it. So I like Markiplier. I thought he was fun to see him in this role. The cinematography, the set, all really nice. This happens in a confined space in a single room of a single small submarine. Okay. So it's not elaborate, but it looks really good. It was smart to do it that way because of budget constraints. You don't want some elaborate, set that you have to design on a small budget. It was small, but it was effective. It was a good set. It was filmed very well. And, one of the kind of buzzy things around this movie was the amount of fake blood that they used in kind of the end of the movie set piece. That was very impressive, very cool. I liked that. If I had to pinpoint something as being the weakest element of the movie, I would say it would be the writing. I think where the writing shined was probably where it borrowed the most from the video game. And beyond that, it seemed like it was very vague and just kind of meandering in a way that didn't make a whole lot of sense and that seemed maybe a little bit too drawn out. It's interesting because last year we had Shelby Oaks that was made by another YouTuber, Chris Stuckman, and I would say that was the weakest part of that movie as well, was the writing. But yeah, I mean, if you're a Markiplier super fan, if you're a big fan of his Iron Lung playthrough, I mean, I think you'll like this movie. I think people who aren't familiar with Markiplier or who are just peripherally familiar with him and who have not seen like his Iron Lung content, I think they're going to struggle a little bit more. I found myself struggling because I wasn't as familiar with things. And there were some things that just didn't make sense to me because of that, I think. I think I would give this movie probably a 2 out of 5 stars. It wasn't garbage. It wasn't great, in my opinion. I definitely would like to see Markiplier make more movies. I think he has some interesting ideas, okay? Just little flares here and there that I was like, okay, that is cool. That's, I think that's good instinct. But I just struggled a lot with this film, personally. Thanks for sticking around for my short thoughts on Iron Lung. And if you have seen it, let me know your thoughts down below. I'd love to hear what you thought of it. Have a good one. Bye.
God will forgive them. I can't live without.